Hey United fam, my name is Shantel, and I cannot believe how much time has passed since the last time that we met together. Seriously, I miss you all so much. Last week, Rick mentioned that it was week 7 of us doing online church, and I was in complete shock because there were so many days along the way that just seemed to drag on. But then when he put a number to how many weeks we've had of doing online church, it really just seemed to make time fly by. I miss you all so much, and I've been praying for all of you through this, that you would use this opportunity to grow and to learn. And I'll share a little bit about what I've been learning along the way. So one thing that I've learned about myself is what kind of roommate I am. So before COVID-19, I would live this on-the-go lifestyle. I would wake up in the morning, press snooze a million times, then I would get ready and I would just rush around in the morning, and then I would go to class, go to work, maybe hang out with friends, come home, do homework, go to bed, wake up and do the same thing the next day. And because I was just rushing around so much in the morning, there were things that I didn't do that I should have done, like making my bed, and I would also just kind of leave a trail of stuff along the way because I was just rushing and I just wasn't thinking of cleaning up after myself. And then this led to some conversations with my family. So we would have conversations like, hey Chantal, you probably should be making your bed and like cleaning up after yourself. But because I was just rushing around, I was just thinking about where I needed to go and what time I needed to get there. But it wasn't until I had this opportunity to slow down that I was really able to think about the effects of my actions. So the more time that I spent empathizing, putting myself in the position of my family, the more motivated I was to act on it and change something about it. And this got me to thinking of other times when maybe I've heard stories or maybe had conversations with people that really just changed the way that I thought. So have you maybe ever had a conversation or heard a story that was just really thought-provoking, change your perspective? And I got to thinking about some of the stories that Jesus would share. And so Jesus would share parables with people, and the point of these parables was to be thought-provoking. So they were short stories that were usually filled with metaphors, maybe some powerful imagery in there. He also included these cultural aspects, this cultural information that was relevant to the time that these people were living in. And so it really encouraged people to think, to feel, and to understand, and then from there to change something about the way that they were living their life. Because the purpose, again, was just to reveal some sort of kingdom truth through this short story. It was meant to be thought-provoking. And so I'm excited because today we're going to be jumping into a parable together. We're going to be jumping into the parable of the Good Samaritan. So we're going to be jumping into Luke chapter 10. We're going to be starting at verse 30, but a little bit of context of what we're jumping into. So there was this religious expert, so someone who knew the religious laws. This religious expert asked Jesus, what do I have to do to get to eternal life or to have eternal life? And this religious expert was basically testing Jesus. But Jesus was smarter and knew what this guy was trying to do. And so he asked him, what does the law of Moses say? And so then the man responded with, love your God with all your heart, mind, and soul, and love your neighbors. And then Jesus then responds with, do this and you'll live. But then this religious man had to come back and ask Jesus, well, who is my neighbor? And so Jesus responds to this religious expert with this story, because you and I would probably think, oh, neighbor, a person who lives right next door to me, maybe someone who lives on my street. But Jesus provided this parable for this man to think through. So let's go ahead and read it together. So starting in verse 30 of Luke 10. So Jesus replied with a story. A Jewish man was traveling from Jerusalem down to Jericho, and he was attacked by bandits. They stripped him of his clothes, beat him up, and left him half dead beside the road. By chance, a priest came along, but when he saw the man lying there, he crossed to the other side of the road and passed him by. A temple assistant walked over, looked at him lying there, but also passed by on the other side. And so there are some important details to keep in mind here. So this Jewish man was basically left on the side of the road to die. And there were two people who walked by him and just completely ignored the fact that this man was suffering on the side of the road. So there was the priest and the temple assistant. And what's important to keep in mind about these guys is that they're pretty much up there in society. Maybe you've read about some sort of people group in history, or maybe you've even read a book that talked about social class. So maybe you've heard about like lower, middle, and upper class. But these guys basically during this time were up there. And they were up there because they knew these religious laws. So you would almost expect that they would be acting on the stuff that they knew. But the reason why they didn't was because if the priest were to touch a man who was dead, he would be considered unclean, unfit for worship. And so he put that above this opportunity to serve this man. So he just kept walking by. Same with the temple assistant. So let's keep reading on together. Verse 33, then a despised Samaritan came along, and when he saw the man, he felt compassion for him. Going over to him, the Samaritan soothed his wounds with olive oil and wine and bandaged them. Then he put the man on his own donkey and took him to an inn where he took care of him. The next day he handed the innkeeper 2 silver coins, telling him, take care of this man. If his bill runs higher than this, I'll pay you the next time I'm here. So there are also some key details that are important to remember here. So this Samaritan man was despised. During this time, there was cultural tension between the Jews and the Samaritans, and basically the Jews felt superior to the Samaritans. So put yourself in that position. Imagine if there was someone that you knew who maybe felt that they were better than you, and maybe they were injured on the side of the road, or maybe there was some sort of need that they had. And then you knew that they thought, or they looked at you and thought, wow, this person's inferior to me. So the last thing in my humanness that I would want to do is help that man. But this Samaritan instead went above and beyond to care for this man. He didn't know him. He simply saw a need and did something about it. And then he went above and beyond in caring for him, and it was demonstrated through his generosity. So let's keep reading. Now, which of these 3 would you say was a neighbor to the man who was attacked by bandits? Jesus asked. The man replied, the one who showed him mercy. Then Jesus said, yes, now go and do the same. What a powerful parable. And again, Jesus is using this parable to emphasize the value of loving others. We talked about right before this parable was shared, to love God with all your heart, mind, and soul, and to love your neighbors. And Jesus is using this to describe this kind of love. And so as Christ followers, we are called to do exactly that, love God and to love our neighbors. And one way we can do that is by serving them. Even if, say, you're not a Christ follower necessarily, maybe you still have questions and you've been wrestling with faith, I think we can all agree that it's important to help people. It's impactful to help people. And right now we are in a time of change. But things that do not change is our call to love God and to love others. And I got to thinking about what this Samaritan did for this Jewish man. And it really challenged me to be thinking about the ways that I'm serving, the ways that I've served before, but then the ways that I can serve now. Because the Samaritan showed love to someone that he didn't know, someone who he had cultural tension with, someone who he could have just ignored, just like the priest and the temple assistant. But he let love speak by the way that he served. So my questions for you are this. How are you serving others? How are you seeing a need and doing something about it? How are you going above and beyond for those around you? And obviously right now, this is different. Maybe you've had opportunities to serve in your church before. Maybe you're on a specific team, or maybe you've gone on a missions trip. Maybe you've gone to somewhere like locally, or maybe you've even gone somewhere in a different state, or maybe out of the country. But there are also ways that we can be serving right now. And I know that right now might seem like we're limited, because I used to associate serving with going to some place and doing something for the people there. And yes, that is serving, but there are ways that we can be serving right now in our own homes. And I feel like right now we're provided a unique opportunity to do exactly that. And so that's why we're introducing Serve Week. And so we're going to be checking in on all of you, and we're going to be challenging all of you and even ourselves to be serving others. And we want to provide you 3 ways that you can do that. And the reason why we want to focus on serving is because in my own experiences, whether that be serving out of the state or even locally, I was so willing to do whatever anyone asked me to do because there was purpose behind that, because I saw that it was an opportunity to demonstrate the love of Jesus to people. But just as we're called to love people in that way, we're also called to love people even in our own homes. And right now, yes, we are staying home, but we can still serve at home and love those around us. And so, like I said, 3 ways to serve. So 1, simply serve someone. Maybe that can be mowing the lawn. Maybe you can go run an errand with your parents for maybe someone who lives next door to you, or maybe someone who is elderly and can't go shopping. So maybe you can show love in that way. Maybe you can write a letter to someone and offer companionship in that way. Maybe you can create a sign and leave it on someone's front lawn so that way they can see it when they look out their window. Just emphasizing that point of, hey, like, I love you. Maybe you can show love in that way and just offer that sort of help. Second, make sure that we're serving without being asked. So that one right there is a challenging one too. So just like serving others, serve without being asked. So maybe you notice that the kitchen sink is getting full with dirty dishes, and maybe that means, hey, you know what? I can go fill up the dishwasher with her. Maybe I can go clean these dishes. Maybe you're noticing that the grass is getting a little long. You can go mow the lawn for your parents, so that way they don't have to do it. Maybe you notice that your laundry basket's getting a little full and you can go do it instead of waiting for someone else to do it for you. Or maybe you're noticing that the floor is getting dirty. Maybe you've brought in some dirt after playing outside, and maybe you can go ahead and just clean that up yourself without leaving it for someone else to do. And third, serve when you're asked without hesitation. And this one is right here, the one that I struggled with the most throughout high school. My parents would ask me to do something, and I would either create some sort of excuse or say that I'll do it later, but then I would never actually get to it. And so my challenge for you is to be serving in these three capacities during this week. Let's make it a habit to serve. Let's make it a habit to love God and to love others in this way, so much so that it just becomes second nature to us. It becomes a part of who we are. And as Christ followers, like I said, during this time of change, the one thing that doesn't change is God, but also our call to love God and to also love others. And we can do that in creative ways, even when we are still doing that in compliance with the guidelines that are put in place during this COVID-19 crisis. So my questions for you: how are you going to serve someone this week? How are you going to serve without being asked? And how are you going to serve without hesitation? And we want to focus our conversations around that this week. So get ready to be asked to share some stories, and we cannot wait to hear your stories. I'm very excited about this week. And like I said, just as we're challenging you to do this, I'm going to be doing this myself. I'm really excited about it, and I cannot wait to talk with you later. So let's get through this week serving others, because we want to show people that we love God, but also that we love our neighbors, even in a time of change. Let's do this together, and let's do this as united. Talk to you guys later.